We're going to be talking about Sally Blick. And this was a very common problem back during the Victorian period. You guys, how like opium is big right now? It's a big problem. You could thank the Victorians for it. They started it. It just never ended. All right, Laudanum was the Victorian equivalent of aspirin. It was a cure-all that settled nerves, eased pain, and ensured restful sleep. The only problem was that it was a syrup of opium. It was available from any pharmacy to buy. It was affordable at around 25 drops for 1 penny. So you can go home, get 25 drops, and, be in another world for 3 days. Of course, it is addictive. This meant people became dependent on the feelings of the high it created and took more and more. The alternative was to withdraw with the typical symptoms of tremors, hallucinations, and sweats. With the doses unregulated and freely available, overdose was a common problem. I've read some articles and papers saying maybe 1 out of 5 people overdosed on this. And this is something that you could buy like, Advil today. It's easy. Because, like back then, during the turn of the century, even the soda, Coke had cocaine in it. So it was just common back then. Sally Blick, who is buried right here with her family, was subject to heart disease. She had seen many doctors, but none had a cure for her. Within the last 6 months of her life, domestic troubles and her failing health prevented her from sleeping, and she had fallen into the habit of taking it for relief. It had not been prescribed by a doctor, but back then all you had to do was walk in, tell the pharmacist how much you wanted, and he just freely gave it to you. So pretty much the pharmacists were drug dealers back then. You could look at it that way. She would not measure out any dosage. She would just drink from the bottle and guess what was the right amount. That's dangerous. 6 weeks before her death, she nearly killed herself by an overdose in this manner. After seeing a doctor, the doctor forbids her and continuing taking it. But legally, he could not stop her because it's an over-the-counter type of drug. It was always kept in her house in the sideboard. No one in the house realized how dangerous the drug really was. Her husband constantly warned her not to take it and had frequently taken it away from her. On the day she died, her husband was called away to the ship docks when he came home. He found her laying on the couch but could be awakened. He suspected she overdosed once again. He looked for the bottle and discovered an ounce had been taken out of it. Wow, that's a lot. Later that evening at 11 o'clock, she died without regaining consciousness. Doctors ruled out suicide, but instead it was an accidental overdose. It is clear that she had an addiction. Life-threatening overdose owes to the preparation of the morphine content within it. Morphine produces a dose-dependent depressive effect on the respiratory system, which can lead to profound respiratory depression, coma, cardiac arrest, and things like that. This stuff was really dangerous.
It's not the same thing as Laudanum, was it?
Yeah, it was Laudanum. And if you look in like old newspapers and magazines back then, there's articles almost every page for this stuff. There's so much competition for it. But not only adults die from it, but just as many children. There's a child who's buried over at 5th Alley West, which is, about 7 alleys down, who died from it. On November 13th, 1858, an inquest was held on the body of the female infant that was aged only 3 weeks old. They were giving this to a 3-week-old baby. The mother administered 4 drops. That is deadly for a baby. 4 drops, that's deadly. It was to soothe the cough and help the restlessness child to sleep. From what I was reading, it sounded like maybe the baby had TB. So it was trying to help the baby, sleep, but 4 drops. The following morning, the child was still drowsy and went back to sleep. At 3 p.m., the mother had decided that her child had slept too long and tried to wake her but could not. She noticed the little girl's skin was a strange color, so she sent for the doctor. The doctor also failed in awakening the child. A few hours later, the child passed due to an overdose of laudanum. At the inquest, the doctor advised that 4 drops was significant enough to kill the child and probably an adult as well. The verdict was given, died from the effects of laudanum administered by its mother. And the cards, everybody who's buried here has a card in the office and they have the cause of death. I see roughly 50 to 60 people buried in the cemetery with that. That's how common the problem is, and that problem is still persisting today. This is a problem that has not gone away for almost 200 years, and it just keeps getting worse and worse. So it's the Victorians' fault. So you know who to blame. So